So, when I made my Danger Rangers iceberg video, I planned on making a follow-up shortly after to go over everything I knew about the planned second season. For various reasons, that idea had to be put off to the side because I had mostly hit a standstill in finding information about it. For a refresher, Season 2 of Danger Rangers was in the works as early as late 2006, when the show was airing the final few episodes of Season 1. Around this time, Educational Adventures brought on more investors to help finance more long-term plans, which ultimately bit them in the behind when one of them, Chris Smith, got into a legal pissing match with Mike Moore, a pissing match that I go into more detail in other videos. In news articles discussing these legal proceedings, it's mentioned that more episodes of the show were currently in production. This particular news article from News 14 Carolina mentions that 13 episodes were already made, with 17 more on the way. If we count the pilot and the 2 clip shows, that leaves us with 16 episodes properly released, and 14 episodes that didn't leave the cutting room floor. So what exactly would these episodes be about? After doing some digging, I found a website for a service called IP Mercantile. As it turns out, IP Mercantile is the one that assisted in the transfer of the Danger Rangers IP from Educational Adventures to what would eventually become Mighty Kids Media. This document states that the sale took place on July 22, 2009 in downtown Raleigh. Included on the website was a whole section dedicated to the sale, which includes a page that lists every single Danger Rangers asset that Mighty Kids got out of the sale. Fire in the Sky, Microbe Mania, Take a Hike, Traffic Trouble, Come Home Captain Safety, And They All Fall Down, Snow Way Out, Bully for You, The Traveling Brayskis, Sheila Shriek, UFO Alert, Good Sports, and an internet safety episode that was never given a proper title. These are the episodes listed on the page classified as under production. 13 episodes that would never see the light of day. Now that we have actual titles, we must see if the rest of the internet has any records of them. Lucky for me, I didn't need to look far. IMDb has listings for 8 of the 13 episodes for Season 2, and 2 of them have actual episode descriptions. Microbe Mania is said to be about Fallbot contracting a virus, and The Traveling Brayskis claims to be about the Braysky brothers from Wet n Wild and a circus that is being threatened. The only other new piece of information we have on this page is an alternate title for UFO Alert, Unidentified Farmyard Object. Going deeper into these episodes reveal a few more things. Take a Hike lists Tara Sands as the sole cast member, voicing 2 characters. Also, both Traveling Brayskis and Unidentified Farmyard Object are revealed to have been written by David McDermott, the writer of Wet n Wild. The last name found through these pages is one Russell Calabrese, who directed both Microbe Mania and Traffic Trouble. Both Calabrese and McDermott are on LinkedIn. Let's see if they remember anything. I got something to show you. You'll recall in the iceberg video that I bring up animation artist Michael Swanigan. What I didn't bring up was his store on eBay. On it includes several unlicensed books full of concept art, model sheets, and storyboards for a wide variety of cartoons he's worked on. About a month ago, a book for Danger Rangers finally hit this store. Knowing that it could contain a treasure trove of unseen content, I naturally had to get it. The book has a good selection of model sheets and characters that would have been featured in Season 2, some of which were drawn by famed comic book artist Scott Shaw. Hang on just a second. Found you. But what surprised me the most was the fact that a majority of this book includes storyboards for one of the episodes from Season 2, And They All Fall Down. Now, unfortunately, this isn't the full episode. The book picks up about 2/3 into the episode itself, but there's enough context to know the full extent of the episode's plot. So, for the first time ever seen by the public, let's go over Danger Rangers Season 2, Episode 6, And They All Fall Down. In an unspecified town in the Midwest, there exists an old mansion known as the Old Warnicki Place, which a young girl named Kate thinks is haunted. One day, the mansion starts emitting strong gravitational waves that pulls in large amounts of metallic objects, which could easily kill someone if a wrench is speeding towards your head at 80 miles an hour. The storyboards begin as the Rangers, consisting of Sully, Kitty, Burble, and Squeaky, trying to fight back against the forces pulling them. Eventually, they realize that they're being pulled towards Warnicki Mansion and willingly allow themselves to be sucked in, with the knowledge that they'll find whatever or whoever is doing this. After being drawn into the mansion's basement, we cut to Fallbot and Kate, who saw the Rangers get sucked into the mansion. Fallbot realizes that things are dire, and the Rangers need rescuing. Before they can do anything, a little red wagon bumps into Kate as she falls into it, being dragged down the sidewalk. Using his roller skate attachments, Fallbot speeds after her, opening up a previously unseen wrist touchpad and keying in a few buttons, activating some rocket shoes.
Rocket!
Kate realizes that she's speeding towards a parked car and screams out for Fallbot, who manages to save her in the nick of time. After being reunited with their parents after the ordeal, they begin to explain to Fallbot about the rumors surrounding the Warnicki place, which doesn't faze the robot as he makes his way towards the mansion. Dad posits, "That Fallbot is one brave robot." I know what you're thinking. Irony, right? Just you wait. Back inside the mansion, the Rangers find themselves unable to leave as the cellar door is sealed tight. With no other option, the quartet opt to explore the rest of the mansion in hopes of answers for what's happening. In what might not actually be a twist in the final product, but is definitely one in the context of these storyboards, we cut to the one causing this whole mess in the first place. Quentin V. Manderbill. As he monologues to himself, we discover that Manderbill is using banana peels to power a large machine. As the duck does a victory dance, the Rangers stumble upon him, shocked to see he's even here to begin with. After getting on Sully's nerves in the best possible way, and making a lot more merch that I wish was real, we get a proper name for this thing, the Gigundo Magneto, a giant electromagnet that would, in theory, create an unlimited energy source that would put an end to fossil fuels. The downside, however, it sucks in a lot of metal objects within a large radius, creating a very hazardous environment, and it creates a lot of sticky goo as a byproduct. Now, if you know your DR episodes from Season 1, you'll notice that this is very similar to what Manderbill attempted to do in that season. In it, he created a teleporter that could easily have changed the world as we know it, but he chose to power it in the most bizarre and downright cruel way. It would have been powered by children playing roughly and irresponsibly on faulty playground equipment rigged with prizes and toys that would have encouraged such rough play. For as ingenious as Manderbill was for his invention, the fact that it endangered the lives of children is what ultimately put him in the wrong. A similar thing happens here. While an unlimited energy source that would better the environment is a huge win, the setbacks ultimately outweigh the positives, at least in this particular incarnation. Anyways, the Rangers all charge the machine in the hopes of turning it off. Manderbill tries to shield it from the four, only for the goo to burst out of the machine and flood the room, trapping the Rangers in place.
Fetish shot.
We then cut back to Fallbot, who is pressing on as metal objects fly past him. Making his way down the stairs to the basement, he nearly misses a rake present on the steps and chucks it towards the floor in rage. I hope you like this new passive-aggressive Fallbot, because it only gets better from here. Fallbot enters the room to discover the Rangers' attempt at breaking free with the grapple lines have failed and are currently being toyed with via the electromagnet.
Super fetish shot.
Fallbot has had enough.
Hey, you mister! Let my friends down and clean up your room now!
Manderbill fires back by turning the electromagnet on him, only to discover that the magnet has no effect on the robot, even though everything else is. Giving Fallbot a scan, Manderbill discovers that Fallbot was made from a very secret alloy that grants him his indestructible qualities.
I'm a very special robot!
Rather than increase the power of the magnet, Manderville opts to trap him in the goo as well.
Whoa, that does it. No more Mr. Nicebot.
Armed propeller.
Manderville begs him to stay back, threatening harm if his machine is damaged. What follows is quite easily the best thing I have ever seen in the entirety of this franchise.
I'm an indestructible robot with removable parts.
Cast off.
Fists of fun, do your stuff. Ow! Who put that there? Oh yeah, I did.
Yeah, it's Fallbot that saves the day. Fallbot. And he does so in a way that could have easily been his best moment. We cut to outside the mansion as Kate thanks Fallbot for both debunking the rumors of it being haunted and stopping Manderville, who has found a new use for the electromagnet by marketing the goo it dispenses as both a kid's toy and a multi-use tool for adults, which has made him popular with both groups. A shockingly happy ending for one of the Rangers' rogues gallery. The episode ends with Fallbot getting special recognition from the Rangers themselves. I have no idea who exactly wrote this episode, as the storyboards don't list a proper writer. It's one of the 4 episodes that doesn't have a listing on IMDb, and I don't have any clue who did the art for the storyboards. But what really matters here is we finally have access to a side of Danger Rangers that has never really seen the light of day until now. A chunk of an episode that was never meant to be. While this chunk might not be a good representative of what the final product would have looked like, it does paint a picture that signifies a few changes that would have taken place between seasons. As seen here, Fallbot has taken a huge step towards being a proper Danger Ranger. Bert has clearly done a lot of tinkering on the robot to make it more efficient and effective. We see him easily prevent a pratfall that would have definitely happened had this been a Season 1 episode. He uses him being a robot to good use, getting the upper hand on Manderville by detaching his upper half of his body to go after the duck and ultimately save the day. In many ways, this episode reads as a follow-up to Waterworks, a Fallbot-centric episode that ends with him saving the day by capturing the episode's antagonist. Unlike that one, where Fallbot's capturing of Commander Octodon was just the Ranger using his clumsiness to their advantage, this episode sees Fallbot saving the day single-handedly and of his own volition. If this is the kind of character development on display, I can only imagine what the rest of the season would have looked like. Sadly, this is all I can share for you right now. So until I find more information for you, I'll see you guys later. Huh? What's that? Wait a minute. They got back to me? What's this?
Holy shit.
Season 2, Episode 9, opens with the Rangers on a mountain road down in the Andes Mountains in the minivan seen in Dog Days, with an attached trailer to it. Up above is the hovercraft, with Sully, Kitty, and Gabriella on board. Almost immediately, they're alerted by Savo to an out-of-control tour bus that's steadily approaching a cliff. Down in the van, Burble, Squeaky, and Bert get ready to intercept it. Back on the hovercraft, Sable pulls up a close-up of the bus itself, revealing the drivers as Cheval and Dudek Braysky, the donkey parodies of the Festrunk brothers from SNL. "Say, my panic-stricken brother, look who it is! I'm a little busy right now, my seemingly doomed brother. Can you not tell me? Why, it is our good friends and heroic buddies, the Danger Rangers! Good news, everyone! We are having no worries now. The Danger Rangers are here!" After saving the tour bus from falling off the cliff, it's revealed that the brothers have gone into the tour guide business following the events of Wet n' Wild. No word about how the snack cake salesman job went, but I imagine it didn't stick. The downside is, as the script details, the bus is quite the fixer-upper, as parts are falling off left and right, especially during the rescue. Bert offers to fix it up, with Fallbot assisting by transforming into a garage creeper. So of the new things added to Season 2, we can also add Fallbot is a Transformer now. It's during this conversation that we find out why the Rangers are down in South America. Bert has invented a new relay station called the Substratospheric Ionic Scanner Link that would help expand Sabo's reaches to the entire valley below. The conversation eventually turns back to the Brayskys, where it's revealed the reason for the reckless driving was due to Cheval distracting Dudek's driving by trying to shove a map in his face. I would make a comment about Google Maps, but even if Google Maps existed by this point, I highly doubt they'd be using it. It's here where we get our first musical number. What that isn't fully detailed. The script only lays out the basic messages of it without any lyrics in sight. After the number, we reveal the Brayskys have set up an impromptu party atmosphere while the Rangers were singing. It isn't until the song is over that they notice and they aren't amused by the sight. After some confirmation that the Brayskys did get the hint about not distracting the driver, the groups part ways, but not before Burble wonders about Frantique, who was confirmed to be on the bus with them. Dudek isn't too worried, claiming that Frantique sleeps inside luggage. This is a completely normal thing for a kid to do. Later that night, the Rangers make it up to the mountain, ready to assemble Bert's device. When they open the door to the trailer, they are met with a troubling sight. Frantique stowed away in one of the Rangers' personal vehicles inside and fell asleep. But that's not all. It turns out Frantique has a twin sister, whom the script calls Vilka, who is currently napping in the kittycopter. The Rangers are dumbfounded by the sight as we end Act 1. As Act 2 opens up, the twins are bundled up and drinking hot cocoa to keep themselves warm. The Rangers still unsure about what to do.
Wowies! I am not believing I am sipping the delicious cocoa of the famous and heroic Danger Rangers! Are they not everything I have said and more, my adorable and fun-loving sister?
You never told us you had a sister, Frantique. Close on Frantique. He concentrates for a moment, trying to remember.
Really? I am almost certain I mentioned it. I am always mentioning so many things.
Sabo apologizes for not noticing the two of them sneaking off in the trailer, which I can only imagine what that sounds like coming from Adler. Kitty is more prioritized with getting the local authorities contacted so they can reunite Frantique and Vilka with their uncles. Sabo gets in touch with said authorities, where Dudek and Cheval are already waiting. The two have sold the bus to buy plane tickets to Oakland. Sully says they'll fly the kids up to Oakland first thing in the morning, which the two agree to. It isn't until the next morning we discover that Vilka is deathly afraid of flying and absolutely refuses to board the hovercraft. Is there a problem? Kinda.
My adorable and strong-willed sister does not like to fly.
Road trip!
Burble and Squeaky are now tasked with driving the donkeys all the way from the Andes to Oakland, California. If we're to believe the Rangers are at the highest point of the Andes, being Aconcagua, which is located all the way down in Argentina, then we're looking at a nearly 6,000-mile road trip that would take almost 8 days to complete. And that's if they don't make any stops, so we're definitely pushing at least 2 weeks with. With Frantique and his twin sister in tow, this is going to be hell. Back in the Andes, we learn another new mode for Fallbot, the Dig-O-Matic. It goes about as well as you'd think. Doing a handstand over the marker, Fallbot articulates into a sort of automated post-hole digger. With a mechanical whine, he lowers a huge whirling auger into the rocky soil. The dirt starts flying. Suddenly, the auger locks up. The whine gets louder and higher pitched, and Fallbot starts spinning like a top. Fallbot spins out of control, churning up a spirograph-like trench in the dirt. The whine dies down, and Fallbot falls to the ground, his head still spinning around at high speed. Fallbot grabs his head with both hands, and it stops, but his pupils bounce around a bit, making pinball machine sounds. Back at the road trip, Squeaky is awfully bored. Noticing the kids reading a little travel booklet, he inquires about it. Frantique explains that Cheval and Dudek get them free from the travel agency the two work for, so they get plenty of mileage out of them. Naturally, they start begging Burble if they can see the local sights, but the polar bear is dead set on getting them to Oakland in time. Frantique, in an attempt to change Burble's mind, shoves the map into the bear's face, blocking his view of the road and causing them to fly off the road and towards a lake. End of Act 2. I'd make a Chitty Chitty Bang Bang reference here, but the script does that for me, as Act 3 opens with Burble flipping a switch that turns the minivan into a makeshift boat, a la Mario Kart 8's hover wheels. Back at the mountain, Fallbot and Bert attempt the drill mode again with a few more barriers in place to keep Fallbot from spinning. Naturally, this doesn't work, and Fallbot ends up falling to pieces. Dejected by the repeated failures, Bert wonders if he should just scrap the mission entirely until he can figure out how to get the necessary holes drilled. Back with National Lampoon's South American Vacation, Frantique and Vilka have reverted to singing songs to pass the time, which Squeaky has not been taking kind to. After enough time has passed, Squeaky suggests a game of license plate bingo. When neither donkey know what that is, Squeaky then suggests a game of 20 questions.
Is it a squirrel with 5 tongues? Is it a big red anteater with a bellyache? Oh, is it a rhinoceros wearing a bathing suit?
One chaotic game of 20 questions later, Burble stops the minivan at a convenience store, where Squeaky gets himself a carton of milk and a trucker's cap. I need to see this image. Visualizing it in my head isn't enough. As the group pulls out of the rest stop, it's revealed that the twins ended up playing license plate bingo. Literally.
And look at all the license plates we collected!
On the twins. They proudly display handfuls of actual license plates removed from cars. We smash cut to the Oakland airport. The four of them look around the place, but Cheval and Dudek are nowhere to be found. Sabo buzzes in with news that he's getting a call from New Zealand. Due to some miscommunication, what was meant to be Oakland, California becomes Auckland, New Zealand, where the Bracekys have set up a new business venture. As Squeaky probably wants to yell out a string of curse words, the two ask the Rangers to fly out to Auckland with Frantique and Vilka in tow. Back on Dejection Mountain, Sully chimes in with their troubles, telling Burble and Squeaky that they'll have to fly out to Auckland on their own. After a little pep talk from Gabriella, Bert gets enough confidence back to come up with a new plan to get the holes drilled. I'd love to point out that the script calls for a building montage specifically in the pattern of the A-Team, which is probably only funny to McDermott, me, and the Aniverse crew. Substituting the drill with the Kittycopter's propeller blade, the drill now works without a hitch. Back at the airport, Squeaky and Burble are giving it all they can to tell Vilka that flying is the only way they can get to New Zealand. While this is happening, Frantique watches baggage going through the X-ray and decides to sneak inside a black duffel bag and go through it himself. Frantique now has cancer. Squeaky attempts to grab the young donkey off the conveyor belt, but Frantique loses his balance and falls back as he goes through the curtains into the luggage handling area. What follows is, I kid you not, a good chunk of the luggage handling scene from Toy Story 2. A lot of black duffel bags identical to the one Frantique hid in are scattered throughout, and the bear and mouse have to go looking through them all to find the donkey. After coming up empty-handed, the two head back to the security area, only to find them eating ice cream and chatting with airport security. Burble and Squeaky collapse in exhaustion. After a quick cutaway to the device fully set up on the mountain, we cut back to the four now in the airplane en route to Auckland. Squeaky informs Frantique that airplanes have bathrooms, while Vilka admits to Burble that even she thinks her uncles are a bit chaotic with their driving, so the bear promises to thoroughly inspect whatever vehicle they drive before they depart. Now I want to mentally prepare yourself for what comes next, because it might just be the most insane thing I have ever seen in this show. And that's saying something. Are you ready for this? Good, because you're definitely not ready for it. We cut to the Brayskis in their own personal plane, which is just as old, rickety, and decrepit as the tour bus from earlier. They start the plane and zip it across the tarmac of Auckland's airport, baggage handlers nearly getting run over in the process. As they attempt to lift off, the handle breaks. The plane continues to zip around the tarmac, nearly crashing into a landing plane. The very plane that Burble, Squeaky, Frontique, and Vilka are on. This script, man, I swear to God, this fucking script. In the process of narrowly missing the plane and accidental murder, the Brayskis find themselves speeding towards a fuel depot, which could easily cause a huge fiery explosion if they make contact. Before they can even think, the plane starts flying, being supported by cables coming down from the Rangers' hovercraft. Moments later, the Brayskis are reunited, and Dudek and Cheval swear off shady bargain vehicles, only to immediately break that promise when they see an old garbage scow for sale. They're only stopped when Vilka and Frontique point out that the thing is basically an accidental death trap waiting to happen. The episode ends with the Rangers pleased with the kids, as it seems they finally got through to this chaotic family, even if through Frontique and Vilka. Oh fuck, I forgot about the ending short. Without getting too detailed, it's another episode of Wheel or No Wheel from Dog Days, only now being played on the TV studio space the Rangers have. The only things worth of note here include Sabo claiming to have attended a dramatic art school for robots, Fallbot desperately trying to participate in the game, and the script referencing Kramer and Risky Business. One more musical number, and the episode finally ends. My god, that was a lot! Now, I don't want to be too harsh to this script because this was just a first draft. Honestly, your opinion on this episode relies heavily on whether or not you like the Brayskis as characters. I personally find them to be a chaotic breath of fresh air after episode of either kids doing dumb things or villains threatening to harm kids. The Brayskis aren't intentionally malicious, they're just weird. But I know not everyone will like them. I'm actually in the minority when it comes to these three on Aniverse. It's not that shocking to learn that Dave McDermott also wrote the episode where the Brayskis debut back in Season 1, so they are very much a McDermott creation. As for the episode itself, I love it for how unabashedly chaotic it is. In a weird way, the Brayskis work as the perfect foe for the Rangers themselves. They aren't malicious, no, but they need a lot, and I mean a lot, of guidance to keep them from unintentionally harming others through their antics. Sure, Wet and Wild ended with them properly educated on water safety, but that was just water safety. The traveling Brayskis showed that these donkeys still need the Rangers around to school them on proper safety. We see them nearly lose their niece and nephew, almost crash a tour bus full of people in it, and came this close to causing an airport disaster in New Zealand. It's a miracle these donkeys aren't in jail after everything that happens in this episode. At the very least, it ends on a hopeful note. By having Frontique and Vilka in the Rangers' care for most of the episode, and learning from them as they make the trek back to their uncles, the kids become just a bit wiser in the end. They can be there to let Dudek and Cheval know when they're going a bit overboard. Also, wait, what happened to the circus? If I had to give any sort of criticism, I would say the B-plot about getting Bert's invention working up in the Andes Mountains seems a bit underdeveloped. Not that much happens outside of Fallbot fails to get his drill mode working properly, and Bert being disappointed that said drill mode isn't working properly. Because this is just a first draft, I can forgive it because it does seem a lot more effort was placed into Burble and Squeaky's road trip, with them getting into antics along the way like a National Lampoon's Vacation film. If the episode was just about Burble and Squeaky's struggles reuniting these donkeys while the rest of the team are off doing their thing up in the mountains off-screen, it would probably be the best episode of the entire series, at least in my eyes. But does it stack up to the other script McDermott wrote? Well, let's do just that as we talk about Season 2, Episode 11, Unidentified Farmyard Object. We open on a small farm late at night, as two kids of an unknown species, the script doesn't specify, are sitting out on the back porch. Jessie Miller, an 8-year-old farm girl, and her 9-year-old city boy cousin named Kyle, who is there visiting. As they admire the night sky, Kyle gets to reading a sci-fi comic of his. Jessie, however, notices what appears to be a UFO off in the distance over a neighboring farm. Kyle is amazed by the sight and chooses to run off towards it, with Jessie trailing behind him. Jessie, being more well-versed in farm life, tries to warn Kyle that just running into the field of a stranger's farm isn't the wisest of ideas, which she's instantly proven right as he nearly falls into an open well. Catching the attention of the UFO, the kids run off, Kyle leading Jessie to a nearby silo where they hide. As the UFO vanishes, the two attempt to exit the silo, only to find that the door leading out won't budge. Over at Danger Rangers HQ, Savo alerts the Rangers to the kids' peril. It's revealed that the hovercraft is in the shop, so the group, sans Gabriella, who stays behind, fly off in their personal vehicles. By the time the Rangers arrive at the silo, Jessie's parents are concerned about where the kids have run off to. They hear the commotion going on at the silo and make their way over to it. Once they get there, the Rangers are already at work getting the kids out, with Squeaky going in from the top of the silo. After fitting some masks on them to help them with the dust permeating the structure, Bert and Burgle use a trio of lasers to carve out an easy exit. Once the team gets the kids out of the silo and reunite with the parents, we hear a voice off in the distance. "That's no excuse for trespassing!" Semi-OTS on Iverson Bros. The Iverson brothers are both urban and urbane, and horribly out of their depth in the farming industry. Bertram is the eldest, a bit more outgoing and friendly, while Francis, his younger, smaller brother, is a bit short on people skills. They don't mean any real harm, but their dream of escaping the rat race and living in rural bliss has gone somewhat awry. "I've got a good mind to contact the authorities. What are you all doing here anyway?" Squeaky snaps at the Iversons for failing to danger-proof their silo, up to including the fact the kids were able to easily get inside. Francis snaps back, but not before older brother Bertram reins him in. The father explains to the Rangers that the Iverson brothers recently moved in from the city a few months prior and bought the farm next door, which was in desperate need of renovating. Bertram asks why the kids were snooping around, which Kyle is more than willing to admit by talking about the UFO. While no one believes him, the Rangers are more focused on how unsafe the Iversons' farm is, which gives the parents the idea to offer to get the whole community together to help out, with the Rangers even being offered to stay with the Millers for the weekend while this all plays out. Bertram is a bit overwhelmed by the offers of support, but Mrs. Miller insists upon it. As the group departs to turn in for the night, we hang on the Iversons. "Good gravy, Bertram. That was horrible. Look, my palms are sweaty. I can barely breathe. Do I look pale to you?" "Alright, I'll admit, that didn't quite go according to plan. I mean, those poor children were nearly siloed or something. But you know, the Chinese use the same word for crisis and opportunity. Remind me not to look for job opportunities in Peking." I can't tell if that racism was intentional or not. As they reach the top of the hill, we can see the UFO parked in the barn. It's really just an assembly of farm junk wired up with lots of Christmas lights, attached to the arm of a portable grain auger. As it turns out, the Iversons are using this makeshift UFO to attract media attention and potential merchandising to help pay for everything necessary to get the farm up and running. But now that the Rangers are running around, they'll get even more attention. And free labor to boot. What follows is, quite honestly, something I had never even thought about throughout the entirety of the first season. A villain song. The script details the first musical number solely dedicated to the Iversons describing their goals for turning their farm into a tourist trap, selling merchandise like t-shirts, hats, and all sorts of weird tchotchkes. Okay, as we'll see, the Iversons aren't exactly villains per se, but it's the first musical number seen in Danger Rangers that doesn't include the Danger Rangers. It's very easy to call this a villain song because these two are the closest thing we get to actual antagonists in this episode. As the song concludes, we begin Act 2 the following morning. The Rangers are all decked out in farm duds as the whole community is pitching in to make the Iversons' farm more on the up and up. The Iversons themselves are taking on a more low-effort supervisor position while keeping the barn hiding their UFO off limits. What follows is, I shit you not, 4 different flashback sequences to past rescues that all took place on different farms across the US. Burble saves 2 young skateboarders using an irrigation ditch as a makeshift half-pipe when water rushes through it. Squeaky saves 2 kids playing hide-and-seek from a shed full of pesticides and poisons. Kitty saves 2 kids from using an old well covered with creaky old wood as a makeshift stage for an impromptu play. Sully saves a little girl from a tractor when she accidentally starts it up while playing on it with her friends. Again, this is a rough draft, and something like this could have easily been pruned or rewritten to be a bit more streamlined. I joked in the original review that Mike Moore showed Kazanjian the British scare film Apaches in order to get him to commit to the Danger Rangers project, but after seeing all of these flashbacks basically recreate Apaches without the horrific child death, I'm starting to wonder if Moore actually did see Apaches at some point and had screened it to the people at Educational Adventures and/or Animotion Works when he got word that an episode on farm safety was in the works. After these flashbacks, we cut to a bit later in the day. Mr. Miller and the Iversons address the crowd of volunteers, telling them that they're being rewarded for their hard work with a barn dance later that night. As the volunteers celebrate, Kyle notices Bert working off on his own. Bert, interested in Kyle's talk of UFOs and aliens, is inventing an automatic night vision camera to help aid in properly uncovering if the UFO really is the work of aliens or not. Later that night, Kyle waits outside, hoping for the camera to pick up any readings. Eventually, the UFO shows up again, leading Kyle and Jesse to attempt to go after it again, but not until a certain someone stops them in their tracks. "I think I see a light up ahead. Did you hear something? I thought I heard something." Squeaky starts addressing the two about his disbelief in aliens, only for one to appear right behind him. End of Act 2. Act 3 opens with the 3 getting scared by the alien and running off into a cornfield. During the panic, the 3 of them bump into Burble, with Bert in tow. "We really did see one this time, Bert! For real!" Burble is tall enough to actually see over the tops of the corn. He surveys the area. Well, I've never heard of a flying saucer that left tire tracks." The group checks the camera just as Sully and Kitty see what the commotion is about. As Bert connects his Seva watch to the camera, we see our alien scaring the kids and Squeaky before lifting his mask up and revealing himself to be Francis. With the Iversons now in their sights, Sully hatches an idea to turn the tables. One scene change later, everyone, including the local volunteers, are gathered on the back porch of the Miller house. Sure enough, the strange lights return once more, and the UFO comes back into view, this time with the alien visible from inside. As seen through some high-tech night vision binoculars, the UFO is being held up by wires from the grain auger and being towed by a tractor being ridden by Bertram. With the Iversons right where the Rangers want them, Sully enacts his plan. Suddenly, a much larger pattern of lights appears in the sky above the small saucer. The small saucer is caught in a bright beam. The Danger Ranger's hovercraft hovers over the Iversons' UFO, decked out to look more like a UFO itself. Gabriella and Fallbot, using a voice changer, tell the duo that their trickery has pissed off actual aliens, and they must abandon their fake spacecraft or else they face serious consequences. Undeterred, Bertram punches it and takes the saucer towards the road, unaware that he's driving it towards some high-voltage power lines. The grain auger breaks one of the power lines and drops near Bertram, who freaks out and swerves the tractor into their irrigation ditch, the UFO hanging inches from the ground. If either brother touches the damp ground, they could be electrocuted to death. If the Rangers don't cut the power and lock down the irrigation system, the Iversons are all but dead. Before any of the Rangers can do anything, water starts rushing through the system. Burble pulls out one of Bert's inventions meant to stop water and hurls it into the ditch as a Hail Mary. It works, but for how long is uncertain. With some sort of window of time, the Rangers get to work cutting the power. After making quick work of turning the power off, Bert and Burble rush to save the Iversons from their vehicles. We cut to a little bit later as two paramedics finish up a quick assessment of the brothers, who look like they've gone through hell. The brothers apologize for everything that happened, not realizing just how hard flipping a rundown farm can be. Mr. Miller tells them that the community was more than willing to help the two of them learn the ropes of farm life. After what the two of them had gone through, the Iversons accept the offer. We end the main story with Kyle asking Bert if alien life really is out there, which Bert admits would be great if there was. The camera tilts up to the night sky, where a glint is visible before it fades to black. So in the world of Danger Rangers, alien life definitely exists. The ending short shows a few weeks have passed, evidenced by a large collection of new produce. The Rangers quiz some young tourists about farm safety, which ends with an ice cream party in the barn. This episode is a nice break from the chaos that was the Traveling Brayskis. Farm safety is definitely something not everyone is going to recognize, but it's all the more important for those at home watching. If you've seen that one episode of 911 Lone Star with a corn silo, yeah, that should give you an idea of just how dangerous these places can be when you've never been around one long enough. Exhibit A, Apaches. Again, if I had to give it a knock, the flashbacks need to be reworked a bit so they don't grind the plot to a screeching halt. Much like the other script, this is also a first draft, so anything that needed ironing out would probably get ironed out later down the line. And going by these two episodes, it's clear that Dave McDermott tends to favor antagonists who aren't clearly meant to be antagonists. The characters that present themselves as antagonists are never outwardly malicious, they're just misinformed. The Brayskis, as mentioned before, unintentionally leave chaos in their wake, which the Rangers have to clean up. The Iversons are a pair of yuppie brothers who find themselves way in over their heads with a business venture they know next to nothing about, resulting in them resorting to a risky scheme to help give them the attention they need to help kickstart their farm. The worst they did was fail to properly secure their grain silo from Kyle and Jesse. Bad, yes, but it's clear they didn't mean to actually harm them. Which leads me to my next point about this season. Every episode of Season 2 that I was able to get a hold of, be it the two scripts from McDermott or the art book I bought from Swanigan, ends with the antagonist being redeemed in some way, shape, or form. Manderville manages to turn his life around and sells the gooey byproduct of his latest invention as a toy and all-in-one tool. The Brayskis are seemingly on the right path as Frantique and Vilka are much wiser after their road trip and try to keep them on said path. The Iversons aren't met with scorn for their attempt at drumming up publicity, but open arms from the local community as they try to offer to help them with their new venture in whichever way they can. Turning a new leaf. Going down the right path. Acceptance. Not a single arrest or defeat in sight. Now, I don't want to insinuate anything, since this is only just 3 episodes and this might not be indicative of the rest of the season, but going off of these 3 episodes alone, it seems there's some sort of effort to make sure the season's antagonists, at least those that have actual antagonists, do not suffer any consequences for their actions, outside of maybe getting their egos bruised or humiliated in the process of being saved by the Rangers. I don't mind endings like this, but the beauty of the villains from Season 1 is that they openly acted the way they did, knowing full well that their actions are actively harming kids, and they either don't care about the kids they harm, or they actually revel in it. It shows an extreme that is still able to be present in children's media because it teaches a very important lesson. And sometimes, those lessons need to go to extremes in order to leave a lasting impression on both the kids and parents watching. Take that away and, well, you get the idea. Now, don't get me wrong, having these pieces of media that have never seen the light of day is an incredible experience. But these are pieces of media that are part of an incomplete puzzle. Without any further leads for the rest of the episodes, this is where the trail ends for the time being. But there is one thing I want to bring up in relation to my findings. In all 3 of my interactions with the crew who worked on Season 2, they all pointed to one aspect that paints a pretty sad picture. None of these people were paid for their work. McDermott said that Moore was unable to pay anyone because of the lawsuit and had to leave. Calabrese backed this claim up, saying $14,000 was not paid to him. Scott Shaw told me that he had to call Educational Adventures multiple times to make sure his final paycheck was sent through for his work. These revelations only make this show's fate all the more somber. Michael Moore was a man who found all the success and didn't know exactly how to handle it all, throwing out multiple new copyrights for shows that would never come to fruition, making all sorts of deals that could have been saved for when the show was more self-sufficient, and starting production on a second season when the funds for it just weren't there. Danger Rangers was never cancelled. It ended due to a series of tragic events that ended with it in the hands of someone who didn't really know what to do with it outside of rerunning it and maybe a few promotions here and there. Now it's stuck in legal limbo, ruled over 2 people who are currently in the healthcare business and seemingly have no interest to ever return to it. At the very least, all I can do right now is drum up enough interest for a proper revival or continuation of this show, even if that involves me starting a grassroots campaign to get the rights to the franchise into the hands of someone that truly cares. At the end of the day, all I want to do is make sure this entire season sees the light of day through any means possible, be it a proper animated continuation, releases of the scripts, or maybe even adapting them into a series of comic books. Whatever happens, I want to make sure that everyone who worked on this season gets the money they so rightly deserve for working on it. Is that such a bad thing?